distinguished presenters for our honorees tonight. But for our next and final honoree, he's pissed off so many people over the years that we're afraid of, we'd ask someone, they'd turn us down. I say it as a joke, but there's a saying that organizers like, that there's no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, only permanent interests. That's right. And it sounds a little harsh and sometimes it's misunderstood. And we do, everybody here we consider to be permanent friends of Vocal. Although, if you paid by credit card, we have your home address. So we will protest you if need be. I say, when Charles is stirred by injustice, he's constitutionally incapable of staying quiet. It's a problem common to a lot of people in this room, actually, a lot of faces I see. When it comes to Charles, he doesn't care if you're the President of the United States. And yes, he did disrupt President Obama to protest waiting lists for AIDS drugs around the country. He doesn't care if you're the Archbishop of New York. And yes, he was once arrested for praying in St. Patrick's Cathedral, which was probably one time he was arrested when he wasn't actually doing anything wrong. We know about his relationship with Rudy Giuliani. And it's because Charles knows which side he's on. Charles is on the side of transgender women in East New York, on the side of homeless drug users in East Harlem, on the side of gay men in City Soleil. And he never ever forgets it. The work we do can be lonely, it can be isolating. If we're doing it right, it's going to provoke hostility. But I'm so glad that we've got someone like Charles who's fighting on our side. About 10 years, I've known Charles for a long time. I've known Charles actually longer than most people in this room, except maybe my brother who's here tonight. I first got arrested with Charles when I was 18 years old, I think, at the White House, and many times since then. But about 10 years ago, I was working for Charles. I was an organizer for the national campaign to end AIDS. And I would travel all over the country, churches, community groups, service providers, deliver these presentations, and sometimes Charles would come and deliver presentations soon. The problem was, I'm an awful organizer. There's a reason why Elizabeth and Jason and Jeremy and Alfredo and Anna and Tatiana and Elizabeth, I actually should say Elizabeth twice because she's like twice the organizer. There's a reason why they organize and I do the paperwork, but we'd have these meetings and there'd be 2 people in the room and Charles would have come all the way down from New York. And he would say, my background as a Baptist minister taught me that if I can reach one soul, that's enough. Amen. But for a community organizer, that's a terrible lesson. You want lots of people. If you just reach one person at a time, you're not going to fill the bus all night. But Charles has been an evangelist to bring about the end of the AIDS epidemic for as long as I've known him. And it's true, there's no step forward that's too small for him to cherish, but there's also no goal that's too audacious, too big to work towards. Around the same time I was working with Charles in the campaign to end AIDS about a decade ago, his longtime partner Keith Kyler had passed away. And it was around the same time that Joe Bostic and Joe Capestany were 2 of the first staff, along with Jennifer Flynn, who made Vocal, then NICAN, what it is today. And Charles is also close to Bostic and Capestany. And it's important for us to remember them. For Vocal, they were both long-term survivors of HIV, done stints in prison, stretches of homelessness, had used drugs on and off throughout their lives. And that informed their activism, and it shaped the organization that we are today. And they knew, like Charles knows, that in the march towards a beloved community that Dr. King talked about, that we can't leave anybody behind. And that's core to the work we do. But in the decades since the campaign to end AIDS, and since the death of Keith and Bostic and Capestany, there have been so many people we've lost. I know Charles has presided over more funerals of housing work staff and clients than I imagine he could bear to recall. Other people like Ramon Velasquez, who should be with us in this room to celebrate and mourn. as Charles works towards an end to the AIDS epidemic in New York, which is why we want to honor him tonight, he remains undaunted. He is as tireless and insistent on that vision as ever. And it's because he knows it's about the people we love, and it's about guaranteeing dignity for all people to achieve that goal. So one last thing I want to mention about Charles, and that's, I don't think anybody's seen my underwear tonight.
Give it time,
save that for
Sean.
the after party, which is what we'll talk about next. But Charles taught me the importance of a belt during our organizing years, or during my time organizing for him. We'd be in a small church in southern Alabama or somewhere in rural Mississippi. My pants would be hanging off my ass, and Charles would say, there's a decorum around here, and if your pants are hanging off your ass, it's going to look bad for me. I wonder what's wrong with me that I'm bringing this kid around. So I'm grateful to Charles for that lesson as well. And Charles, please come up. Please help me welcome Charles.
What Sean didn't tell you is that on our first road trip through the South, in Mobile, Alabama, we drove to the mall. We went in together to a department store, and I bought Sean a belt. Sean, I want to thank you and all my friends at Vocal who had anything to do with the decision to honor me tonight. And I want you to know that I am incredibly, deeply touched and honored. But truth to tell, I actually can't accept this award in my own name. And I want to tell you why. In October of 2003,
Take your time, Reverend.
I was asked if I would lead a memorial service for Joe Capestany. We gathered in the community room of the Aurora Hotel. And there, giving his eulogy, I called Joe an AIDS warrior. And for my eulogy, I offered up what I considered to be the critical attributes of a true warrior. I closed the eulogy by reading the 91st Psalm, which I renamed the Psalm for the AIDS warrior. Just a few months later, March 2004, I was invited to lead another memorial service. This one for Joe Bostic, giving his eulogy. I called him an AIDS warrior. And I attributed to Joe Bostic the same characteristics that I had attributed just a few months before to Joe Capestany. It was less than a week later that Keith Kyler, the love of my life, partner of 15 years, co-founder of Housing Works along with Ginny Schubert and Eric Sawyer, passed away. At his funeral service, I began the eulogy by saying that my eulogy for Joe Bostic had been a dress rehearsal. And indeed, I ended that eulogy by reading the very same psalm. Now, I won't go through all of the characteristics that I think are attributable to an AIDS warrior, but I do want to share with you a couple of things that those three men had in common. And the first of those is that I never saw a hint in any one of them of self-pity. I never heard any one of those three ask the question, why me? Life had handed each one of them a pretty tough hand of cards. And AIDS was just one more bad card in the deck. But they played that hand that they had been given with such grace and such dignity and such determination to use whatever they had to see an end not only to the AIDS epidemic, but to the structures that had allowed that epidemic to flourish. So even if they didn't ever realize that dream in their lifetimes, they lived lives that were full of purpose and meaning. Now, as a person living with HIV, I've never met anyone who asked for the virus. But some of us, for some of us, HIV is just one bad card in a pretty good hand. Amen. For others, HIV is just another bad card. Still, I firmly believe that God has placed us here for a purpose.
Yes, sir.
And that it is our business on this earth to find that purpose out and to realize it. And the cards we're given from the deck are just guideposts along the way. So, if it's all right with you all, I'd like to accept this award on behalf of the folks sung and unsung who've been handed the bad deck of cards, and whether because of that or despite that have committed themselves to the battle against AIDS, who have kept the faith and stayed in that fight. I really do believe that we can end AIDS as an epidemic in New York State by 2020. We will only do that if we all come together, pull together, push together, pray together, and you know what they say, if you can't pray, sing, and if you can't sing, shout. And even then, we won't always agree on how to get to the end. Even then, it's not all going to be celebrations about the 30% rent cap. There's going to be setbacks. We're going to be discouraged. There are going to be times when it looks like there's no way we're ever going to make 2020 and see an end. So as somebody who's been fighting AIDS for now over 2 decades, I want to tell you I know a little something about disappointment and discouragement. And I want to tell you how I deal with it. Whenever I find myself in a funk, I close my eyes. I think back to a time when I was younger. sitting behind the pulpit at Emmanuel Baptist Church on a Sunday morning. At 11 o'clock sharp, the ushers would open the doors at the rear of the sanctuary, and the choir would begin to process in, the robes shimmering, swaying from side to side as they slow stepped their way down the aisle. And gently at first, and then with a swell, you would hear their voices as they sang. I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy, but I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. So yes, I do believe we can see an end to the AIDS epidemic, not only here in but it'll only happen if we all stay in the battlefield until it's over. And if you ever think about giving up, if you ever think we're not going to make it, just tell yourself those words. I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy, but I don't believe. I said I don't believe. He brought me this far to leave me. Thank you.